Thank you so much. I bring greetings in the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And I also must bring greetings from Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi, who would have been here with us at this conference, but he has to be unavoidably absent because he's undergoing some treatment in the United States of America. So we'll continue to ask that you continue to pray for his health. But he's doing well. My Archbishop is one person that nothing shuts his mouth. I know while he was going through chemo, I saw him on Zoom preaching somewhere. And I'm asking what is going on here. But it's just the strength and the blessings of the Lord that has been leading him. So by way of introduction, I come from central Nigeria, from Jos. We usually say Jos is the fault line between the predominantly Christian south and the Muslim north. And we have had our own issues with radical Islamic sect, Boko Haram in northeast, but in central Nigeria now is a sect of a radical Islamist militia that's devastating villages and communities. In the last 10 years, having worked as a journalist, I've been to one village after the other, trying to bring and make sense really of what is going on, because with the statistics from Open Doors, it says now Nigeria is, I think, the second or the third most dangerous country to be a Christian, and indeed that is true. Simply because for simply just having a name, a Christian called James or Peter, or just simply walking through a particular street, you could get killed. And every day I come back home in the evening, for me, really, it's always a gratitude to God, and it's the simple gift of another day. And that's how life has been for us in Nigeria. But let me come back to the theme of this conference. The love of Christ compels us. And let me read this verse 14 again. It says, "For the love of Christ controls us, because we have concluded this, that one has died for all, and therefore all have died." I'm reading from the ESV version. Now, just before chapter 5, in chapter 4, Paul made us understand that the faith that we have will continuously and consistently be challenged. And actually, before Paul did that, Jesus Christ himself said so to his disciples many times, that to be his followers, we will come against a lot of conflicting ideas, a lot of conflicting truths, a lot of issues that the world does not want to abandon to face the truth that God himself has given. And it's been like that. That's what it is in Nigeria. And having worked as a journalist and indeed as a pastor, I can tell you that it is massively, massively frustrating to be in a society, in a community where almost every day people are killed in their dozens. And we have a government that is supposed to provide security and protection, but the corruption that is within the government itself and within the security agencies is so bad that even money that is given to help the army to fight the radical Islamists is stolen by both government officials and military officers. And 10 years down the line till today, as I speak, people are still being killed. And unfortunately, many more will still be killed because of the ideology that's driving the challenges that is facing Nigeria, and indeed also the greed, but also the agenda that you have from different levels of government. And having worked in Borno State in northeastern Nigeria, I must say that I came across villagers and people who have survived the Boko Haram attack, and they were in displaced people's camps. And I met this 16-year-old lady, this girl. She was carrying a baby on her back, and I said, "Your child?" She said, "No." She said, "I was running with my sister. She was carrying this child on her back when a bullet hit her, and she died instantly on the spot. So I took this child, that's about the child can't be more than a year old. And I ran. And now I've been in this camp for more than a year. I've been trying to feed this baby. I've been trying to get some feeding. Even in the camp, the discrimination is still very high. And we have men, Muslims, who come in and tell these Christian girls that if they would marry them, they will now be given a home and they wouldn't have to rot away in those displaced people's camps. And some of the girls actually do get married to these Muslims just so that they can get a home. But of course, the thing is, they get divorced 3 months later, they are back into those camps, and these men come back for another fresh set of girls to marry and try to give them a home. And it got to a time that so many children were dying in Borno State, northeastern Nigeria, for the food that was to be brought into those camps were stolen by government officials themselves. So it's such a dark, dark story and a dark narrative when it comes to the issue of the insurgencies, the attacks, and the radical Islamic sects that have taken over northeastern Nigeria and now central Nigeria with the Fulani cattle Islamists. What they have done is to concentrate predominantly in Christian communities in Kaduna, Plateau, Benue, Taraba, and Adamawa states. These are states in the Middle Belt region of the country. And consistently, again, we have this modus operandi where when they come, they surround the village and then open fire with AK-47s. And as people panic and run, they now follow them, either shoot them down or cut them down with a machete. I came to this village, and 2 days after it was attacked, and there was this 5-year-old girl. She had a machete cut over her face, and there was a stitching, I would say a sewing, because it looked like somebody just used some needle and thread to just hold the skin together, and there was still blood coming out of her ear. And I asked, where are her parents? And so somebody said her parents were killed, and she, the 5-year-old girl, saw the killing of her parents, and the house was burnt down. So I took her to the hospital. We spent 6 weeks, and after the treatment, I brought her back to the village, and they said, we don't know what to do with her. I mean, we don't know who will care for this girl. So I'm happy to say that I took Rachel, she's now my daughter, and we adopted her in my family. And she's such a beautiful, just exciting to see the smile on her face every day. We're still struggling to get her through the trauma. Now, I'm bringing these stories all together because as a pastor and a reporter, I sat down just in front of my church. There's a dividing road between the Christian and the Muslim community in Rayfield, where I come from. And the hatred is so bad that you do not cross to the next street because you certainly will get killed, even within just town itself. So I sat down and I was really contemplating, what do we do as Christians? How do we carry the love of Christ? But to be honest with you, that was not really what was in my mind. My mind was, I'm now sitting in front of my church. A Catholic church not too far from me was bombed about 2 weeks before. And I was wondering, how do I defend and protect my church? Because if you travel in Nigeria, almost every 100 meters, there is a military or police checkpoint. But I thought that perhaps if I got a gun in the church, an AK-47, there will be military officers in the church who are retired, who perhaps might be able to have a gun in the church so that when somebody runs towards my church with a bomb, at least to minimize the casualties, maybe the military officers can do something if they have a weapon. So while I was contemplating that, a little girl came and was crossing. She can't be more than 7 years old, and I was wondering why she was not in school on a Thursday morning. And I called her and I said, why are you not in school? She said, oh, my parents were killed and I can't pay my fees. And I said, no, primary school is relatively free. So why don't you tell your parents that the pastor in this church will pay your school fees? And the little girl agreed. And as she was walking away, but I thought that she may not necessarily represent the truth. I mean, she may not either she was running away from school or she may not necessarily say, this is exactly what the pastor said. So I thought, let me just walk with her and see who I could meet in the house and ask if I could pay the little girl's fee. It was as she was walking away that I realized that she was a Muslim and she was going into a Muslim community. And I thought that was not good. So, but I had told the little girl I was a pastor, and I told her I was paying her fees, and if I turned back, I felt my conscience that would not speak well for me as a pastor. And so that was the only reason why I followed this girl. But to cut the long story short, after a lot of talking back and forth, I met an imam in the mosque, but I made it a point of duty to introduce myself to him, to tell him that I'm a pastor, so that at least I will have nothing to do with this girl, and eventually she'll walk her way and I'll be happy and be relieved of my conscience will be clear that at least I tried something. But the imam sent for her mother, and the mother came, and she said, she's my daughter. She's now selling some peanuts and whatever we could sell so that we can feed the family. And I said, okay, don't worry, I'll take care of this little girl. But how about you? What do you do? If she goes to school, how do you feed? She says, we don't know. And when she says we don't know, I mean, what do you mean? She said, well, as a Muslim, the husband had 3 other wives. So I did a quick calculation, and I thought, well, if I send a member of my church, or if I get anybody to teach you how to at least do something and make a living, will that be okay? And she was happy with the idea. Again, to cut the long story short, with this interaction, 9 months down the line, I had organized a training for 204 Muslim women who had now learned to do one thing or the other to help, and all of them widows, by the way. All of them widows who had learned to help themselves one way or the other to feed their families. And then I called my Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi and I said, I'm in trouble here because from the 204 women, they also have children that are out of school. What do we do? And the Archbishop said, the diocese will take care of that. Let them all send them to whatever school they want. And months down the line, the children are in school. This wonderful, amazing Muslim women, we interact with them. We started building this relationship that eventually brought in the peace between the two communities. And the imam, so on a Sunday morning, just outside the street, there was a siren and the commotion. And after the service, the imam himself came towards the church and said, Pastor, I'm so sorry. I have nothing to do with this. I said, what are you talking about? He said, the bomb. I said, what bomb? I don't know what you're talking about. Incidentally, while the service was going on, a young man was walking towards the church with a bomb. And one of the youths, who was a Muslim, noticed that and alerted the police in a checking point that was not too far from the... So all the commotion we heard was the anti-bomb squad that had arrested the young man and taking him away. So the imam came to just plead to just let me know that the committee had nothing to do with that. Now, why I'm bringing this story is simply because what I wanted to achieve with an AK-47 was what the Lord had provided through my contact with this girl, and we have built a loving relationship with this Muslim community. It's just an amazing, amazing story. I know when the Baroness Caroline Cox, the member of the House of Lords, visited Nigeria years ago, she came to this community, and it's been a wonderful thing. She's helping till today support the peace-building initiative that is going on there. Now, this brings the fact of the love of Christ when it comes to the issues and the challenges that we face in northern Nigeria. Not that anything has changed. If anything else, the intensity of the attacks have continued. This year alone, between January and August, 3,000 Christians were killed. We have about, I would say, 400 to 500 have been kidnapped, because that region now has become the kidnap business or franchise region of the world. The poor communities have been forced to pay close to 1 million pounds if we convert in ransom. They have to sell their goats, sell their cows, sell their lands just to pay ransom. And you have the government and the military officers and the police that will urge you to please pay the ransom so that you get your family member back. This is how bad it is. But in these tragedies is also the story of grace. It's also the story of blessings. Because in this, again, we have been working as pastors, and we have seen that bringing the light and the love of Christ into these areas would bring the transformation, not just for the peace in the community, but also to fulfill the Great Commission of going out and making disciples of all nations. And we are excited as pastors to come together when we've been assisted a lot by Release International in northern Nigeria to continue to bring the light of the gospel in these communities. And in the last 2.5 years, we have recorded, I would say, more than 200 Muslims that have turned to Christ, and more also that I can't mention here because of the security and the strategies we've adopted, because we've now decided to carry the gospel into the regions that are still controlled by the radical Islamists. Because in the villages that they occupy now, if you are a Muslim, you don't have a problem. If you're a Christian, you either convert or you are ejected or you are killed. So we found our own ways. We've met as pastors. We've discussed the issues and how best we could begin to carry the gospel and carry the light of Christ and the transforming power of our Lord Jesus Christ into these villages. And to God's glory, we do have testimonies in those communities and those villages where we are having now young men that have been taught and indoctrinated on the hatred about Christianity and church are the ones now calling us to say, can you send us Bibles? Can you give us a Hausa Bible? Or can you give us a Kanuri audio Bible? And so now it's the Bibles are going in so much. And unfortunately, I don't know whether to say it's unfortunate or fortunately, at least in Maiduguri, again, what happened was because our strategy was working, Boko Haram now was stopping commercial vehicles, and they were identifying Christians either by their ID cards or their ATM cards. And if they were men, they would shoot them on the spot and then take the women away. Because now they were realizing that Christians were now penetrating and we were beginning to infiltrate those communities. And again, we are changing our strategies. But the point is, the Lord has raised an army or is raising workmen. And we are happy to continue to do what we are doing because we see the light and the life that comes into our dark region in northern Nigeria, despite the challenges. Yes, it's been difficult. Yes, it's been stressful. And indeed, it didn't come without its casualties as well. I've lost one member of my team. She was arrested by the police. So what is going on now is either you are accused of blasphemy and you are killed on the spot, or else you just disappear and you're abducted, and especially with the young girls. So the targeting now is young girls. So we have one of our team members who would go in, and any Christian girl that was kidnapped or abducted, she would wear the same dressing and the burqa, and then go into those communities and try to find out where those girls are being kept, and we find our ways of bringing them out. But the police arrested her, and she was charged for human trafficking. She was detained for 6 weeks in the police, without charge, by the way. We went to court, we did everything to get her released, and the police would keep telling us that the file is in this office, or it's in that office, or it's here, or it's there. But anyway, after we raised a lot of issues over her detention, she was eventually released. But she caught ill in her detention because it was a deplorable place to be kept in a police detention in that part of the country. But she died soon after. But even with this, we all have agreed, like my Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi will say, the faith that we have is worth living for and is worth dying for. And we're happy to die for this faith. We're happy to take it wherever it takes, whatever it takes. I go from village to village almost all the time. As soon as I get back to Nigeria next week, I have another conference with the pastors, and we will also be going into at least 15 other villages to see how else we can continue to bring this light and life of Christ. We're happy to do that because we know that indeed the love that we have for every one of us involved, our faith has grown. We have seen Jesus walk with us one step at a time. And every evening I came back home, it's just a prayer of thanksgiving with my wife and thanking her also for the gift of another day. Because by the next day, we are all out there again. Yes, it's possible that when you go out, you may not come back. But even if that happens, we are still excited that the Lord has found it. I mean, we've been found, it's an honor and a privilege that the Lord has picked us to get in there, to continue to spread the gospel, and to continue to bring the light to a very dark community and society, and all the things that are unfolding. And we will continue to ask also for your prayers. Because even in this, we know that with our elections coming on early next year, and actually by the end of this year, we know that the killings will intensify, because that was what it was from 2015. We do not and are not able to rely on the government anymore for protection, so communities are working their own little vigilantes and their little policing and whatever they can. But we are also continuing to disciple the young men and the young women and to let them see that this love of Christ continues to push us on. That with songs of praise, with excitement in our hearts, with all the bombings and the killings, you need to be in a Nigerian church whenever there's worship. I don't know how many of you have been to parts of Africa, but when we sing and dance, it's crazy in church. I mean, you are just so humble when you sing to praise. Nigerians, we do all sorts of things. We love the rhythm, and it's just this excitement that comes out of the love that we share. And this evening, as I round up, let me just simply thank you for standing with us. Because all over the world, churches and mission organizations in and out of Nigeria, they have been prayer alerts all over the place. I know a lot of you perhaps must have received them to pray for Nigeria, to pray for Sudan, to pray for Syria, to pray for Armenia and all other areas where all these things are going on. But let me assure you that the Lord is answering your prayers. I know it's not all the time that you get feedback from the field, especially for those of us that are on the ground all the time, to let you know that those prayers are being answered. But I can assure you that they are being answered. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here today. Not at all. I've had a bounty on my head for a number of years now, and the bounty actually was just about £100. I didn't know I was that cheap, But the Lord has kept us thus far, and we keep going from village to village. The Lord has protected. We've met with families, and we've prayed with them, and we've hugged ourselves, we've encouraged one another, and we've seen another gift of life and hope that we continue to carry on. So we just want to say thank you, and to also say that we also are aware that you too are facing your own challenges, that you too, in this part of the world, as it is in many parts of the country with atheism, with the cancel and the woke culture that is now emerging, you dare not again continue to say anything if you're a Christian in the public space, because somehow there's this conscription now that is beginning to grow all over the place. But we also continue to pray for you as well, and to also to challenge you that, we are happy dying for our faith, and we just want to beg you not to compromise your own faith. Just stand firm wherever you are. And we know that by and by, the Lord himself, when the night is done, and when we come before his throne of grace and mercy, we know that we will be there rejoicing with the Lord. Thank you so much.